The hook. The jungle was alive with whispers. Leaves moved though no wind touched them. Strange glowing eyes flashed between the trees. The Earth soldier, Captain Ray Carter, moved carefully, step by step, his pulse racing. He had been stranded on this alien planet for 3 days, and every hour felt like a battle for survival. His uniform was torn, his arm carried a deep cut, but he still clutched his blaster rifle tightly. Earth technology was his only advantage here. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of wild flowers and hidden danger. Bird-like creatures with 4 wings screamed overhead, and strange insects the size of a fist crawled along the tree bark. But none of these frightened him as much as the shadow he knew was following him. He had seen her once, only for a moment. A tall figure, strong and fast, her body painted with war colors. She moved with the power of a predator, yet the grace of a queen, an alien Amazon warrior. Every instinct told him she was dangerous, but something in his heart whispered that she was watching him for more than blood. Ray set his camp for the night in a small clearing. He gathered glowing fruit from the nearby bushes, the only food he had learned was safe to eat. He kept the fire low, knowing fire could draw both enemies and beasts. Still, he prepared a trap, using the sharp wire from his survival kit and the plasma energy cells from his pack. The trap was silent, hidden under leaves, designed to hold something larger than a human. Something like her. As the night deepened, silence spread across the jungle. Even the insects seemed to hush. Ray knew this was the moment. She was coming. He lay close to the fire, pretending to rest, his blaster hidden under his arm, finger ready on the trigger. Then he heard it. Soft steps, heavy but controlled. Leaves shifted. A branch cracked under pressure. The hunter was near. Suddenly, the trap snapped. A flash of blue energy sparked through the clearing. A cry burst out, strong and furious. Ray jumped to his feet, aiming his rifle. And there she was, caught in his trap. The Amazon warrior towered above him, her body bound by glowing wire, her arms straining with inhuman strength. Her eyes burned like twin suns, fierce and unbroken. Her skin was dark bronze, marked with strange white lines like symbols of her tribe. Her long black hair framed her face, wild and untamed. And though she was captured, she did not look afraid. She looked angry, angry at him, angry at the trap, angry at being caught like prey. Ray's heart hammered, but he did not fire. He studied her carefully. Every part of his training screamed, eliminate the threat, survive at all cost. Yet, as he looked into her eyes, he saw something more. Not only rage, but pride, and beneath that, something like curiosity. She growled words he could not understand, her voice deep and sharp like thunder. Ray shook his head slowly, answering in calm English. I don't understand you, he said, but his voice was steady. He stepped closer, his blaster still raised. The Amazon pulled against the trap, her muscles trembling with force. For a moment, Ray thought she would break free, but the wire glowed brighter, tightening, holding her fast. She stopped, breathing heavy, watching him with sharp eyes. Her chest rose and fell, her gaze never leaving his. The firelight danced across them both, human and alien, hunter and prey. The silence grew heavy again. The jungle seemed to wait. Would he kill her, or would she find a way to kill him first? Ray lowered the blaster slightly, just a little, enough to show he was not ready to pull the trigger yet. Her eyes widened, only for a second, but he saw it, surprise. No warrior of her kind had expected mercy. He whispered softly, I don't want to kill you. His words meant nothing to her, yet his tone was clear. Her anger cooled, not gone, but reshaped into something else. She tilted her head, watching him as if studying a puzzle she could not solve. The night stretched on, the fire burned low. Ray sat across from her, his weapon still in hand, his trap still strong. But inside his mind, questions grew louder. Why had she followed him for days without striking? Why had she allowed herself to fall into his trap when she was so skilled, so powerful? Was it fate, or was it her choice? He felt a strange shiver, not of fear, but of something new. He did not know it yet, but this moment, this night, was the beginning of a story neither human nor Amazon could have imagined. A story of war, survival, and a bond stronger than any weapon. The jungle whispered again, the wind carrying voices that sounded almost like prophecy. And Ray Carter, the Earth soldier alone on a hostile world, realized he had captured more than just an enemy. He had captured destiny itself. Clash of strength. The trap shook like a storm. The glowing wire stretched and sparked as the Amazon warrior pulled with all her might. Each muscle on her arms swelled with power, her jaw set with fury. The Earth soldier, Ray Carter, tightened his grip on his blaster, ready for the worst. He had seen many enemies before, but none like her. Her strength was raw, beyond human, beyond anything Earth could train a soldier to face. Every pull of her arms sent vibrations through the ground. It was like watching a lion rage inside a cage. And yet, despite her fury, she did not scream for help. She did not call for her tribe. She fought alone, proud and silent. Ray's eyes narrowed. His instincts screamed danger. If she broke free, she could tear him apart in seconds. Still, he waited. Something inside him wanted to see just how far her strength would go. He wanted to know if the trap, or his courage, would last longer. The Amazon bared her teeth, her eyes locked on his. It was no ordinary stare. It was the gaze of a predator, sharp, unyielding. But there was also challenge there, as if she demanded he prove himself worthy of standing before her. Ray raised the blaster, finger on the trigger. For a breathless second, time stopped. The jungle around them held its breath, waiting for the shot. But he did not fire. Instead, he spoke, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Stop fighting," he said, though he knew she could not understand. Still, his tone carried weight. And strangely, she paused, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. The firelight danced across her bronze skin, highlighting the strange markings that covered her body. Symbols of war, perhaps, or of honor. With one last furious pull, the Amazon threw her head back and roared. The sound echoed through the jungle like thunder. Birds scattered from the trees, beasts growled in the distance. Ray stood his ground, his heart pounding. She was terrifying, yet magnificent. This was no ordinary prisoner. This was a queen of her world. The wires sizzled as it held her, glowing brighter. Her roar faded into heavy breathing, her strength slowly giving way to exhaustion. At last she stilled. Her chest heaved, her eyes burned with hatred and something more. She looked at Ray as if daring him to end it, daring him to prove if he was warrior or coward. Ray lowered the blaster slightly. It was not weakness, it was a choice. For reasons he could not explain, he wanted her alive. Perhaps it was respect, perhaps it was instinct, perhaps something deeper that he could not name. But in that moment, the clash between them was more than physical. It was a battle of will, a battle of spirit. The Amazon tilted her head, studying him. Her breathing slowed, her muscles relaxed, though the fire in her eyes never dimmed. She spoke again, her words sharp, foreign, carrying weight like a blade. Ray shook his head, whispering, "I don't understand you." But he held his gaze steady, showing her he would not bow or break. The silence grew heavy once more. Then, in an act that surprised them both, Ray holstered his blaster. Slowly, carefully, he stepped closer to her. The Amazon's eyes widened just slightly, though her pride refused to show fear. The fire crackled between them, sparks rising into the night sky. Two warriors, two worlds, bound together not by choice, but by fate. Ray reached for the wire controls on his belt, his thumb hovering over the release switch. One wrong move, and she could crush him in an instant. One wrong decision, and his mission, his survival, his life would end. And yet he pressed it. The wire loosened with a hiss, glowing coils falling away. The Amazon was free. For a heartbeat, she stood still, staring at him in disbelief. No enemy had ever captured her. No enemy had ever released her. Her pride clashed with her confusion. Her instincts clashed with her curiosity. Then she stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Her towering frame now unchained, her shadow falling over him like a mountain. Ray's pulse quickened, his body tense. Would she strike? Would she run? Or would she do something neither of them expected? She stopped only a few feet away, her eyes locked on his. Then, without a word, she turned her head toward the jungle, listening, waiting, as if she sensed something beyond the trees. Ray followed her gaze, his own soldier's instincts alert. The night was no longer safe. Something else was coming, something worse than either of them alone. And so, their clash of strength ended not with death, but with an uneasy truce. A human and an Amazon, enemies by nature, bound now by survival. The jungle would not let them remain enemies for long. Something darker was on its way, and both of them knew, without speaking, that the real battle had only just begun. The unlikely truce. The jungle trembled with distant roars. Somewhere beyond the trees, a beast was moving, its heavy steps shaking the ground. The Amazon warrior, now free from the glowing wire, stood tall and silent, her eyes fixed on the shadows. Ray Carter kept his blaster raised, but not toward her. He knew the real danger was not her anymore, but whatever stalked them both in the dark. For a long moment, neither spoke. She could have crushed him. She could have vanished into the night. Yet she stayed, her body tense, her hand gripping the long blade at her side. Ray felt a strange calm, as if the two of them were no longer enemies but soldiers standing before the same storm. The sound grew louder, branches snapping, trees swaying. A creature stepped into the clearing, its body huge, covered in black scales, eyes burning like molten gold. Its jaws opened wide, lined with teeth like swords, dripping with glowing saliva. The beast growled, the ground quivering under its weight. Even the Amazon stiffened, her grip tightening on her blade. Ray took aim, his finger on the trigger. The beast charged, the ground shaking. In that moment, Ray and the Amazon moved as one. She leapt forward with a cry that split the night, her blade flashing in the firelight. Ray fired his blaster, the blue plasma bolt striking the beast's chest. The creature roared in fury, slashing its tail through the air, smashing a tree in half. The Amazon rolled to the side, fast as lightning, while Ray fired again, his shots burning deep scars into the monster's hide. The beast swung its head toward him, its jaws opening to swallow him whole. Ray steadied his rifle, but before he could fire, the Amazon leapt onto the creature's back. Her blade sank deep into its neck, blood spraying like fire across the clearing. The beast howled in pain, thrashing wildly. Ray seized his chance, firing 3 precise shots into its eye. The beast collapsed with a final roar, shaking the ground as it fell. Silence returned, heavy and thick. The fire crackled, the jungle hushed, and only the heavy breathing of 2 warriors remained. The Amazon stepped down from the beast's corpse, her body glowing with sweat and blood. Ray lowered his blaster, his chest rising and falling. Their eyes met again, but this time there was no hatred. There was recognition. For the first time, the Amazon spoke slowly, carefully, her words still foreign, but her tone softer than before. Ray could not understand the meaning, but he felt it. It was not a threat, not a challenge. It was respect. He nodded once, keeping his voice low. "Looks like we fight the same," he said. She tilted her head, her sharp eyes narrowing. Then, unexpectedly, she touched her chest with her hand. "Kareth," she said firmly, her voice strong. Ray blinked, realizing she had given him her name. Kareth, the Amazon warrior, once his enemy, now something else. Ray tapped his chest in return. "Ray," he answered. Her eyes softened for a brief second, though her face remained proud. It was a fragile thread of understanding, but it was real. In that moment, the wall between them began to crack. The beast's body burned with strange smoke, its blood sizzling against the ground. Ray knew more dangers would come soon. He turned toward his campfire, then looked back at Kareth. With a motion of his hand, he gestured for her to sit near the flames. She hesitated, her pride wrestling with her curiosity. But then, slowly, she stepped closer, lowering herself to the ground. For the first time, human and Amazon shared the fire. The night stretched on, filled with silence and the sound of the crackling fire. Ray took a piece of glowing fruit from his pack, offering it toward her. Kareth frowned, studying it as if it were a trick. But then she took it, biting with sharp teeth, her expression unreadable. She ate without complaint, then threw the empty skin into the fire. Ray almost smiled, though he kept his face calm. They sat like that for hours, not speaking the same words, yet speaking in ways beyond language. A nod, a gesture, a glance, enough to build a bridge where there had once been only war. Ray realized he no longer saw her as a prisoner or a threat. She was a warrior, as lost and hunted as he was. And together they had survived. At last, Kareth rose to her feet, her blade gleaming in the firelight. She looked at him one final time, her eyes holding a promise. Not of peace, not yet, but of something stronger, a bond forged in battle. She spoke again, a single word, sharp and clear. Ray could not understand it, but he knew what it meant. It meant this was not the end. It was the beginning. Enemies become allies. The dawn broke slowly across the alien jungle. Mist curled between the trees, glowing in the strange red light of two rising suns. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by distant cries of unseen beasts. Ray Carter sat by the dying fire, his blaster across his knees, his eyes never leaving the forest shadows. Beside him, Kareth stood tall, her blade strapped across her back, her posture that of a guardian, not a prisoner. Something had shifted in the night. They were no longer hunter and prey, no longer captor and captive. They had fought side by side, and in that fire and blood, a silent bond had been born. Still, neither trusted fully, not yet. Their gazes met often, sharp and searching, as if each tried to see the other's true heart. The jungle stirred, the ground rumbling under unseen weight. Ray rose, checking the power level on his rifle. Kareth moved ahead without a word, her steps silent despite the armor plates she wore. It was strange. She walked not as someone forced, but as someone who had chosen. Ray followed, his instincts alert, yet part of him knew she was leading him through dangers he could not survive alone. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the jungle. Towering trees twisted into strange shapes, their roots glowing faintly with alien light. Vines shifted like snakes, and once, Ray swore he saw eyes inside the bark, watching him. Kareth moved without fear, slashing through thorned branches, guiding them with certainty. She belonged to this land, yet now she shared it with him, and that alone felt like a small miracle. Suddenly, a shriek split the air, sharp and shrill. From the canopy above, winged beasts swooped down, their leathery wings beating like thunder. Their claws stretched wide, their mouths dripping acid. Ray raised his blaster, firing bursts of plasma into the air, one beast falling with a smoking chest wound. Kareth spun with fluid grace, her blade slicing through another as it dove, its head severed in a single strike. Together, they moved like a dance, his fire covering her blind side, her speed striking where his aim could not reach. One beast clawed at Ray's arm, dragging him down into the dirt. The acid burned against his sleeve, the pain sharp and searing. He cried out, struggling, the beast's jaws inches from his throat. Before it could strike, Kareth roared, her blade flashing. She drove it through the beast's skull, the creature collapsing dead across Ray's chest. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked, his life saved by her hand. Ray shoved the carcass aside, gasping for air. Kareth stood above him, breathing hard, blood and acid dripping from her weapon. Then, to his shock, she reached down and pulled him to his feet. Her grip was strong, steady, almost gentle. It was the first time she had touched him without anger. The last of the winged beasts fled into the sky, their cries fading into the distance. The clearing was a battlefield of broken wings and smoking plasma burns. Ray wiped sweat from his brow, his arm throbbing with pain. Kareth tore a strip of cloth from her armor and wrapped it around his wound. Her hands worked quickly, precise, almost practiced. Ray stared, half in disbelief, half in gratitude. A warrior of her kind had no reason to care if he bled. Yet here she was, saving him. For the first time since he had landed on this cursed planet, Ray allowed himself a faint smile. "Thanks," he muttered softly. Kareth tilted her head, not knowing the word but hearing the tone. Her lips curled slightly, the ghost of something rare, almost a smile. In that moment, the walls between them cracked even further. The sun climbed higher, the jungle alive with strange light. Together they pressed on, their path leading toward the mountains that loomed in the distance. Every step was dangerous, every shadow held threat, but something was different now. They no longer walked as strangers bound by chance. They moved as warriors bound by survival. And perhaps, though neither would admit it, bound by respect. Ray studied her as they moved, the way her eyes scanned every tree, the way her steps carried strength yet grace. She was unlike any soldier he had fought beside, and Kareth, though she showed nothing on her face, studied him as well. She had seen men kill without honor. She had seen them flee in fear. But this human stood firm, even in weakness, even against death itself. He was unlike any she had known. As the sun began to sink once more, they found a ridge overlooking the endless jungle. They stopped there, resting side by side, watching the strange alien sky shift with colors Earth had no name for. Ray spoke quietly, more to himself than to her. "Enemies don't save each other," he said. Kareth turned her head slowly, her eyes sharp but softer than before. She said nothing, but her silence was an answer all the same. They were no longer enemies. The jungle had seen to that, and though the path ahead was uncertain, one truth had already been forged. The Earth soldier and the alien Amazon were allies now, and neither could deny it. The turning point. The fire burned low beneath the alien sky. 2 moons hung above the jungle, one silver, one blood red, casting strange shadows across the clearing. Ray Carter sat with his back against a tree, his blaster within reach, his wounded arm wrapped in Kareth's rough bandage. Beside the fire, Kareth crouched like a statue, her eyes fixed on the flames, her blade resting across her knees. They had fought together. They had bled together, yet silence weighed heavy between them. The jungle around them whispered with unseen creatures, but here, inside the circle of firelight, there was a fragile calm. Ray studied her from the corner of his eye. Every line of her face was carved with strength, yet there was something beneath it, something that did not match the warrior who had first leapt from the shadows to kill him. At last, Kareth broke the silence. She spoke in her alien tongue, words sharp but softer than before. Ray shook his head, raising his hand slightly. "I still don't understand you," he said quietly. His voice carried no anger, only weariness. But Kareth leaned closer, repeating the words slowly, pointing first to herself, then to him. Her eyes burned with meaning, trying to cross the wall of language. Ray tapped his chest, answering Ray. Then he pointed at her, waiting. Kareth's lips parted, and for the first time, she spoke his name with effort. "Ray," she said, her voice deep but clear. It was imperfect, but it carried weight. Ray's heart skipped at the sound. Then she tapped her chest firmly. "Kareth," she repeated. The fire cracked between them, sparks drifting into the sky. Ray gave a faint nod, his lips curving in the smallest of smiles. "Kareth," he echoed. For a breath, they were not alien and human, not enemy and ally. They were simply 2 souls, trying to understand each other in the darkness. Minutes stretched into hours, the silence no longer heavy but alive. Kareth tilted her head, studying him, her eyes sharp but curious. Then, With a sudden question in her gaze, she pointed at his blaster rifle. Ray lifted it slowly, showing her the weapon. The plasma chamber hummed faintly, glowing blue. Kareth reached out, touching the barrel lightly with her fingertips. She frowned, then spoke a word he could not understand, her tone questioning. Ray shook his head, whispering, "Weapon." He mimed aiming and firing. Kareth's eyes flickered with understanding. She tapped her blade in return, lifting it with pride. 2 warriors, 2 weapons, yet now they were learning to name them side by side. The night deepened, and the jungle grew restless. A howl echoed in the distance, long and hungry. Kareth's hand tightened on her blade. Ray's grip returned to his blaster. But the danger did not come closer. Instead, Kareth slowly lowered her weapon again, her gaze returning to the fire. For a long moment, she sat silently, her chest rising with steady breaths. Then she turned her eyes to him, and in a rare act, she spoke with no anger, no command. Her voice was lower, almost uncertain. Ray could not understand the words, but he felt them. They carried a question, one that reached beyond language. Why had he spared her when he could have killed her? Why had he freed her when he had her trapped? Ray looked into the flames, then back at her. His voice was quiet, steady. "Because you're not my enemy," he said. The words were simple, but the truth in them was undeniable. Kareth's eyes widened slightly, the firelight reflecting in her gaze. She did not answer, but her expression shifted just for a heartbeat. The hard mask of the warrior cracked, and something human, something tender, flickered beneath it. Silence returned, heavier than before. Kareth looked away quickly, her jaw tightening. Yet her hand brushed the ground, closer to his than it had been before. Ray noticed, but said nothing. The fire burned low, the moons drifted higher, and between them, something unspoken grew, fragile yet unbreakable. Ray leaned his head back against the tree, exhaustion finally claiming him. His eyes drifted closed, though his hand still rested near his weapon. Kareth watched him for a long time, her gaze unreadable. Then, slowly, she rose and walked the edge of the clearing, her blade ready, her body a shield. Not for herself, but for him. When Ray awoke hours later, the fire was nothing but embers. And Kareth stood at the tree line, her silhouette outlined by the first light of dawn. She had kept watch the whole night. For him, it was the moment he realized the truth. She had begun to choose him, even if she did not yet know it. Choice of the Amazon. The jungle path grew darker as they climbed toward the mountains. Vines hung heavy from the trees, their glowing tips swaying like ghostly lanterns. Ray Carter moved cautiously, his blaster ready, while Kareth walked ahead with steady confidence. For days they had traveled together, sharing silence, sharing danger, slowly sharing trust. But fate had been waiting, and fate was about to test them both. At the ridge of a high cliff, shadows appeared. Figures stepped from the trees, tall, armored, painted in the same markings as Kareth. Her tribe, warriors with eyes like fire and blades sharper than stone. They surrounded the clearing, their voices raised in cries of war. Ray raised his blaster, heart pounding, knowing he was outnumbered. But Kareth did not raise her blade. Her body went still, her jaw set, her eyes fixed on the leader who stepped forward. He was taller than her, broader, with scars across his chest that told stories of countless battles. He spoke in their tongue, his voice booming. Ray could not understand, but he felt the weight of the words. They were not greetings, they were commands. The other warriors roared in agreement, their blades flashing in the dim light. Kareth's eyes darkened, her shoulders heavy. Ray realized with a sinking feeling she had been given a choice. The leader pointed at Ray, his voice sharp as a blade. There was no need for translation. The meaning was clear: kill the human, prove loyalty, return to the tribe, or defy them, and be cast out forever. Ray's throat tightened, his grip on the blaster firm. He looked at Kareth, searching her face. She stood frozen, her blade in her hand, yet unmoving. Her tribe shouted again, voices echoing off the cliffs, demanding her decision. Ray spoke softly, though he knew she would not understand. "You have to choose," he whispered. His voice carried no anger, only truth. Kareth's breath came heavy. Her gaze locked on him. Her hand trembled, the first time Ray had ever seen her strength waver. The leader barked another command, louder, angrier. The tribe's chants filled the air, shaking the ground. Kareth stepped forward, her blade rising. For one heart-stopping moment, Ray believed this was the end, that all their battles, all their nights by the fire, had led to betrayal. But then, with a roar that split the sky, Kareth spun. Her blade did not strike Ray. It struck the ground between them and her tribe, the stones splitting with the force. She shouted words in her tongue, her voice filled with fury, defiance, and fire. Her tribe staggered back in shock, their roars silenced. Ray stood frozen, his blaster lowered. He could not understand her words, but he understood the truth. She had chosen. She had chosen him. The leader snarled, his eyes burning with rage. He barked another command, and the tribe surged forward, weapons raised. But Kareth stepped between them and Ray, her blade flashing in warning. She shouted again, her voice a storm. For a breathless moment, the warriors hesitated. They looked at her, at the pride in her stance, the fire in her eyes. And they knew she had turned her back on them. She had chosen the human. The leader growled, spitting on the ground. He raised his arm, signaling retreat. The tribe slowly withdrew into the shadows, their eyes still burning with hate. But their silence carried a promise. They would return. Kareth lowered her blade, her chest heaving. Her hands shook slightly, though her face remained hard. Ray stepped closer, his voice quiet. "You saved me," he said. Kareth turned her eyes to him, and for the first time, there was no barrier in her gaze. No enemy, no wall of pride. Only truth, raw and unshaken. She touched her chest, then pointed at him. A gesture simple, but clear. Her choice was made. Her loyalty was his. Ray felt a chill run through him, not of fear, but of awe. He had seen warriors break. He had seen men run. But Kareth had stood against her own people, against her own blood. For him, it was more than survival now. It was destiny. The jungle grew quiet once more, the wind whispering through the trees like ancient voices. Ray holstered his blaster. Kareth sheathed her blade. They stood side by side, no longer prisoner and captor, no longer strangers, but something far greater. Two warriors bound by choice, bound by fire. And from that moment, the path ahead belonged to them both. A wife by choice. The night was quiet after the storm of battle. The jungle lay heavy with silence. The only sound the crackle of their fire and the slow breath of two warriors who had survived what should have killed them both. Ray Carter sat across from Kareth, his blaster resting beside him, though for the first time, he felt no need to keep it close. Kareth cleaned her blade carefully, wiping the blood from its edge, her hands steady, her face unreadable. But in her eyes, something had changed. The memory of her tribe's anger still echoed in the air. Their leader's voice, demanding she prove her loyalty. Their chants, calling for his death. And her choice, her blade not against him, but against her own people. Ray still could not believe it. She had given up her tribe, her honor, her world for him. The fire burned low, shadows stretching long across the ground. Ray finally broke the silence, his voice low, steady. "Why did you do it?" he asked, though he knew she would not understand his words. Kareth looked up at him, her eyes sharp as always, but softer now. She touched her chest, then pointed at him. The same gesture she had made before, but this time her expression carried more weight. Ray frowned, trying to understand. And then, slowly, Kareth spoke. Her voice was firm, though the words were rough in his language. "I choose," she said. Ray froze, his heart thudding. It was broken, imperfect English, but clear enough. Kareth leaned closer, her gaze never leaving his. "I choose you." For a moment, Ray could not speak. All the battles, all the nights of silence, all the dangers they had faced together. This was the answer. He stared at her, his voice almost a whisper. "You'd give up everything for me." Kareth tilted her head, her face proud, her eyes unshaken. "Not give," she said slowly, carefully. "Take new." Her meaning hit him with the force of a strike. She had not given up her life. She had chosen to build a new one with him. Not as captive, not as ally, but as something deeper. A bond not forced but chosen. Ray sat back, exhaling slowly. He had never asked for this, never imagined it. But he could not deny the truth. Somehow, across worlds, across battles, she had seen in him what she had never seen in her own people. Honor, respect, and something more. Kareth stood suddenly, her tall frame casting a long shadow across the fire. She lifted her blade high, then drove it into the ground before him. The stone cracked, sparks flying. Her voice rang out in her own tongue, fierce and proud. It was a declaration, a vow. Ray did not know the words, but he knew the meaning. It was her pledge, her oath. She stepped closer, kneeling before him. Her hand touched his shoulder, strong and unshaken. Her eyes locked with his. In her world, warriors did not bow. But tonight she bowed to him, not in defeat, but in choice. Ray's throat tightened, his chest heavy with something he could not name. He reached out, placing his hand over hers. No words were needed. The firelight flickered between them. Two warriors from different worlds, bound now not by survival, but by a bond deeper than blood. Kareth's lips moved again, this time in broken English. "Wife," she said. The word fell like thunder into the silence. Ray's eyes widened, his breath caught. But her gaze did not waver. Her choice was clear. The jungle seemed to shift around them, the wind whispering through the trees like ancient voices bearing witness. An Amazon warrior had chosen an Earth soldier, not as a prisoner, not as an ally, but as a husband. The fire burned brighter, as if the world itself accepted her vow. Ray finally found his voice, his hand still resting on hers. "If that's what you want," he said softly. His words carried no doubt, no fear, only respect. Kareth nodded once, firm, final. Her eyes softened in a way he had never seen before. The fierce warrior, the untamed hunter, had chosen to stand not with her tribe, but with him. From that night forward, they were no longer just survivors. They were partners, bound by trust, bound by choice, bound by love forged in fire and blood. And though the jungle whispered of dangers yet to come, Ray knew one truth with certainty. He was not alone. The Amazon warrior was his, not by force, but by her will. She had chosen, and her choice changed everything.